So I was going through an old textbook from 22 years ago plus, and it had a lot of interesting articles in there. One of them that I found to be interesting was about what makes a good leader, especially in today's days and age. Thought that I would take a look. And I thought it was funny because it says the most effective leaders are alike in one crucial way. They all have a high degree of emotional intelligence. It says not that IQ and technical skills don't matter or that they're irrelevant. They're not. They are very important. However, somebody without the emotional intelligence component, a person can have all the great training in the world, an analytical mind, have endless supply of great ideas, but they're not going to make a good leader unless they have the good emotional intelligence. So then they go into different aspects of what is emotional intelligence. And it talks about 5 components. One of them is self-awareness, having the ability to recognize and understand your moods, emotions, and drives, as well as their effect on others. Some, self-confidence, having realistic expectations, the ability to reflect, and also have a level of sense of humor related to yourself. That's what it kind of talks about in regards to having self-awareness. That is something with people with personality disorders, with the actual not the traits, but the actual personality disorders, would have a hard time, or would have a hard time doing, as they have a difficult time reflecting on themselves and think that the world around them should change versus themselves. The other aspect has to do with self-regulation, the ability to control or redirect disruptive impulses and moods. And this means that the person can be trustworthy, have integrity, having comfort with ambiguity, and just being open to the idea of change. And it's not that, and it's to also where you don't automatically go to judgment. You actually think before acting, in regards to making certain judgments towards others. The third area is motivation, which is just having a passion to work for reasons that go beyond money or status, to pursue goals, and have a strong drive to achieve. Optimism, even if you're going to be faced with failure, and having a commitment to the organization. The fourth one is empathy, which is the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people, being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. People who are empathetic can also have cross-cultural sensitivities, and they can provide good service to their clients and customers, and have that understanding aspect and expertise for, I guess, maybe problem solving in a healthy way. The fifth one is social skills, which is the ability to manage relationships and build networks, find common ground, build rapport, and that's typically hallmarked by being effective in leading change, being persuasive, and have expertise in building and leading teams. that's the social aspect. It's not just being sociable. It is having the ability to develop healthy relationships with others. Now, thinking back to all of that, you have self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Now, there's one emotion that somebody who is a narcissistic, antisocial personality disorder, psychopath type individuals, there's one emotion that cannot be faked. People can fake being happy, they can fake being sad, they can even have some tears go down their face so that you think that they feel bad. However, the one emotion that they are unable to fake is empathy. So, think of those aspects in relation to women and how women's health and hormones and just hearing people out, I guess, how that can, people would think that a woman could possibly fail in those areas. I guess if you were thinking about different societal standards, women are all over the place, they're crazy, they're this, blah blah blah. But on the other aspect, a woman would be very good in having the skills related to being empathetic and to establish those social skills or establish those social rapport when networking with other individuals. I look at these 5 things and I am wondering why Donald Trump is considered a good leader. He's not self-aware. His self-regulation is January 6th subpar, for lack of a better term. I think he's motivated, but I think he's probably motivated for his own purpose. He doesn't seem to be empathetic towards anybody. You can say whatever you want about his policies, he doesn't care, but if you talk about his ego, he's going to be upset. Right there, that's not putting the country first. That's putting your ego first. Now, you have people talking about, I'm going to nuke you. No, I'm going to nuke you. Is the ego going to get in the way of that? Or does the man have the ability to actually use those skills of self-regulation and self-awareness and make sure that he's protecting the country and the people versus showing off in these narcissistic tyrant dictator roles that we are seeing all across the world? And apparently he has social skills. You see him at Epstein party photos and he seems to be having a fun time. Yet I also know that he's belittling to a lot of people. I think he's made fun of basically every ethnicity, disability, anybody of a marginalized population. The people, which technically means the people of America, a lot of them. So, again, especially now that the Epstein files have come out and people are talking about descriptive information of what this president did, why is he not being impeached? But yet the Republicans went after Bill Clinton. And that was, and this is why the two-party system is a problem. This is why I worry about the people who are on the extreme left or the extreme right. The world is not an all or nothing thinking black or white world. Your opinions are your opinions. That doesn't mean that they're fact. You have to provide actually evidence-based research, evidence, statistics that explain all of that. That back your point. Versus, but I never hear that. And I just think that if people who are in Congress or any leadership positions should really think about their emotional intelligence. And now again, tell me why a man is better fit to have the most powerful position in the world versus a female, when he doesn't seem to meet any of those factors of what makes a good, of what emotional intelligence is and what makes a good leader. So I think that, let me go back to the Gillette toxic masculinity commercial. That was a very divided commercial. I don't remember if people remember it from several years ago. But what I noticed was the people who were so offended by it, or the people who are so offended or against women in powerful positions, typically are one of those, you might want to think about your level of toxic masculinity. Guys don't have to drive trucks, race cars, or play a sport, be athletic in order for them, or make a lot of money, or whatever people think in order for them to be a man. And a female doesn't have to have babies, be in the kitchen, clean, do this to be a woman. That's not what defines genders. And I think when I look at my parents and then say my nieces and nephews are the generation below me, I think it's a great difference. Huge difference. Just with the age of the internet, social media, a lot has changed in society. And personally, I think that more younger people need to step up and become interested in politics and go for some of those leadership positions, especially with their knowledge of technology, AI, this and that. It's things that we need within the White House or the administration to make sure that we're keeping everything secure. But that's not what's happening. Instead, Donald Trump is suing the IRS and the Treasury Department for having his long-awaited tax returns leaked, whatever, a long time ago. When he said, and I don't understand that, because he said he was going to release them eventually. So why are you suing two of the most important, or two very important aspects of the government or of the financial state of the country, because you're upset that they saw your tax returns? That's not good emotional intelligence. That's the motivation is purposefully for you. The self-awareness, self-regulation, questionable, and not really being empathetic about how the impact of that is going to have to the taxpayers. And what was the last one? Motivation, self-regulation, social skills. That's not really doing a lot of great networking within the administration. And that right there is a prime example. Despite the Epstein files and everything else, despite him going against the Constitution and everybody else, and him breaching the peace, and him talking when he's not supposed to, and just I don't know how people are still supporting him, because you see, when people are in a position of government, I remember Tim Pawlenty, the governor of Minnesota, years and years ago, maybe 20 years ago, they talked about him running for president potentially. He was a Republican. He was okay. But yet I remember there was a budget issue that they were going back and forth on, and he decided to come up with this whole sentencing corrections scheme, taking away rehabilitative programs for prisoners, and it was the job of, I was a research analyst for the state, and one of my jobs was to determine the impact of proposed laws on the budget, or how much it was going to cost in the years to come. For instance, if you create a new law, that's going to put more people behind bars who break that law. So are you creating a law? So you have to look, are you creating a law where everyone's going to be in prison in a few years? Or how is this going to work? How is this going to impact the future? And it's sad because many of the times it doesn't have an impact until years later, when they're done and gone in office. So I remember Tim Pawlenty created a bill that made him look good, but was going to cause problems 10 years down the road for the next person that was governor in that position. That's not a good leader. That's making you look good and not thinking about the state, or not thinking about the country. And these have been the leaders that we have had. And these are the leaders that we need to have removed. Why do police officers have to take a personality assessment, but yet members of Congress do not? I have seen and heard many lives of many people getting wrecked because they had to be held to standards higher that were holding the president, their administration, and everything in the Congress and everybody else to the same standards. That's worrisome. So I want people to think about, yes, is this ICE stuff terrible? Yes, it is. But now I'm starting to feel as if Minnesota seems to be much more deeper. I don't know why Tim Walz is still governor. I don't know why Keith Ellison hasn't done anything as the executive or as the attorney general. So I don't know what's going on, but I feel like it's some sort of ploy for some sort of political shift somewhere that, I don't know. There's been a lot of Minnesota politicians that have been focused on Washington and haven't been focused on Minnesota. We have over 60 multi-million-dollar companies headquartered here, yet we have the highest tax rate. It's bothersome. Especially when I saw all the holes and all the problems in the Department of Human Service and the Department of Corrections and the union and the Attorney General's office and many other things that were occurring. And I would call and try to place my suggestions because I thought it was asinine that what I was experiencing or hearing or witnessing or coming across, yet you can't even get a phone call back from a manager. And so now they have us focused on fighting each other when we really need to unite and tell and make sure that every person that is in Congress follows the articles of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the amendments. And they should actually be quizzed on it. I mean, isn't that the oath that they take? Don't they put... I am in shock. And I think everybody should technically be removed. And there needs to be resources set up where you can go and you can look at all of the candidates and you can find out information about them. So people actually know who they're voting for versus just saying, oh, this name looks nice. It's not a responsible way that we have right now. And it shows. Because that's why we had somebody spend 4 years buddying up to dictators and tyrants and communists to learn their methods, then take 4 years off and a bitter loss that totally just ignored himself or ignored his loss and he couldn't face it, only to now have policies that his administration, Trump's administration, has started. But now, like the Tim Pawlenty situation, you're not seeing it being carried out or the impact of it until years later. So that's why they can easily blame the Biden administration for many things. because people aren't going to think that it's going to go back that far to him because they don't do the research or just believe what he has to say and calls it a day. But I'd like to go back to the time when I would want every person who's in Congress to read what that 13-year-old girl wrote about what happened to her by Donald Trump and how he would test their sizes using his fingers, and it's yet everybody got all mad at Bill Clinton. Both sides have faults. Both sides are wrong. But I think that if people actually came together and followed the articles of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and like the Ten Commandments, they would realize that this world would be a much happier place. But because we've been taught that you don't talk about politics, people tend to ignore them. So I think that voters need to be educated if they are going to vote. It shouldn't just be an age. It should be, how smart are you? Where's your emotional intelligence? And do you actually have the ability to elect responsible people and not get brainwashed by all of the gaslighting, saying things that are unnecessary? How's that border wall working out for all those ships coming into the ports? But you see, he doesn't want the ports to get it and have the Democrats be right by saying it's not about a border wall, it's about borders. So he just goes and shoots up the ships and boats while they're still in the water. Makes him look good, doesn't it? It's the small little things. See, because if they actually went to the ports, that would make the Democrats right when they said that. And another thing is, parents need to stop trying to conform their children to a certain gender before they even before their brain is fully developed, for one, and why are parents giving kids and doctors giving kids medications on hormones before they even use their parts? That's wrong. I don't care what people that made me shy away from being a liberal. But yet the Republicans are so against abortion, but yet the research in stem cells and children's blood and all this other stuff, but yet you ban abortion, now all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of people that you don't want to pay for. Do more research. Find out who's having abortions. And I bet you would see that it's a majority of the people are people that cannot afford the child anyway. That's going to cost the parents and the guardians more money. What if the child has some sort of disability that's going to limit their quality of life for themselves as well as their family? Caregiving takes a toll on couples, relationships, any relationships, family, friends. There's better ways. There's much better ways. And personally, I don't think that anybody should be if you did it to your daughter, you probably wouldn't like them. But because you don't know the victim, it makes it okay. Before him talking about putting his fingers in women, it was talked about that it was just locker room talk. Well, the Epstein files show that that's actually what he did, but to teenagers, but to determine their size. How degrading. And then you wonder why females are considered crazy, or that females speak up against toxic masculinity. Because isn't that, you can't be a walking contradiction. Have integrity, have values, have morals. And everybody should make sure that the commander-in-chief gets held accountable for the crimes that he has committed against the American people and against so many others. He's a great talker, though. Isn't that what people said about Obama? But whatever happened to his talking skills? Because now he's just using his invading skills. And there has to be a limit to how many executive orders you can do. Why do we have a Congress then? Why do we have senators and representatives if all you're going to do is executive orders? Yes, Dick Cheney bought up all the bunch of land that had oil, and George Bush bought up a bunch of land that had fresh water springs. What resource or minerals are you going for, Donald?